Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I analyse games using the mindset of speedrunning and look at the game from three perspectives. First the casual experience, which is how most people first play the game. Next the speedrunning experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. And finally the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. Although keeping in mind this is a new game, we won't have a tool-assisted speedrun to talk about, unfortunately. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description and chapters on the video. And today we're looking at Yooka Laylee, which is a very fun 3D platformer made back in 2017. Before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date. Subscriptions help out the channel a bunch, and I have a new video up every fortnight on the channel. So if you're familiar with older 3D platformers, this game's gonna look pretty, well, familiar. And that's because it basically just looks like Banjo-Kazooie. There's a reason for that. This game was made by the same dev team as Banjo-Kazooie. So when Rare was bought by Microsoft, people gradually left, and then they left to form Playtonic Games and tried to make a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. You can think of this almost like Banjo 3. Now this was the first game made by Playtonic Games, and since then they've made a few more games, including sequel to Yooka Laylee, although this is the only one that sort of plays like Banjo-Kazooie. The Yooka Laylee sequel is a bit more like Donkey Kong Country, really. Now it's no secret that there's a pretty big demand for a Banjo 3 style game, and due to that you'd think this game would be pretty successful, but unfortunately the reviews were sort of mixed when it came out. Fairly medium, not amazing reviews, and some people just outright criticised the game. I think probably why this was is, well, the criticism was it took the N64 stuff and didn't build a whole lot on it. And some of the stuff like the camera feels a bit janky to a lot of players. However, personally, I really love Yooka Laylee. I speedrun Banjo-Kazooie myself, and I enjoy some of the janky camera stuff in there, so perhaps I'm a bit biased, but I think this is a brilliant 3D platformer. I will admit the first time I played this, the levels were all a bit big and overwhelming, so I did struggle to get fully into it the first time, but once you get into it and commit to doing a 100% run, then, well, it's pretty good. But I can see the criticism of it being pretty much like Banjo-Kazooie because it is pretty much like Banjo-Kazooie, although I just wanted more Banjo-Kazooie, so it worked for me. You can see these pages are pretty much just jiggies. You've also got these quills to collect, which are notes. You use these to buy moves, which is how notes worked in Banjo-Tooie. You've got Dr. Puzz, which is essentially just Mumbo from Banjo-Kazooie, transforms you into a different animal. And you've essentially got Furnace Fun or Tower of Tragedy, because there's quizzes in Yooka Laylee. Note quizzes, there's actually 3 across the game rather than one big one at the end. I think it's starting to get a little bit much. Although Yooka Laylee does mix it up a bit. They have dynamic answers to the quizzes, so depending on how long you've been playing or how many pages you've got, the answers will change. Not to mention the cool feature where if you answer the question really quickly, you actually skip 2 squares. Yooka Laylee has the equivalent of Jinjos, these are called Ghost Riders, but again, they've sort of mixed it up a little bit. Some of these Jinjos have gimmicks to catching them. For example, this one runs away from you until you're able to get it. And you got this one where it's invisible until you use your sonar ability to uncover it. There's a couple more like ones that you have to feed and stuff like that. Also, as you might expect if you're familiar with Banjo-Kazooie, they have some pretty good humour and funny lines throughout the game, so it was good to see this come across as well. Classic Rare / Playtonic stuff here. And although there's a lot that's derivative of Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, they did add a few new bits and pieces. For example, with each level you can expand the level by paying more pages. So you sort of pay once to open the level and then once again to expand the level to the full thing. Although to be honest, when I played this game for the first time, I just expanded all the levels right away because I had enough pages to do it. And that saved me having to come back later apart from like moves and stuff. You've got sort of different mini-games. I know Tooie was starting to do this a lot, but you've got Rextro's games, for example, which are like these arcade ones. They're fun to play once, but unfortunately the game makes you play them twice. I think one thing that didn't come across from Tooie was being able to travel between levels. So in Tooie you could solve various puzzles traveling between them, but that's not the case in Yooka Laylee. Personally, I actually like that a bit because I got a bit confused navigating Tooie sometimes, especially as a kid. Yooka and Laylee have a whole new move pool as well. For example, you have this ability to lick honey and stuff and like stick to slopes, or you can also lick like a fire plant and be able to shoot fireballs. So it's pretty nice that they utilize the actual abilities that these animals would have in a realistic way. So very much a different moveset from Kazooie and Tooie. One really cool difference compared to Kazooie and Tooie is how flying works in this game. So you do learn to fly, but you can fly from anywhere in Yooka Laylee, not just a flight pad. You are limited by your stamina meter, amongst other moves that's limited by the stamina, but it's really cool that they designed all the levels so that you'd be absolutely okay to fly through them and it wouldn't break anything. If you are playing this game casually though, I'd recommend kind of zooming through it as fast as you can to get fly and then come back and 100% it. It's a similar thing to how Clockwork Kazooie eggs are really good in Tooie for going back and 100%ing stuff. You also have the rolling ability, which I guess is their equivalent to Talon Trot. It makes you move faster and then eventually you'll get this little roll dashy boosty move. So honestly, the roll is a little bit hard to control. Now that I'm used to it and I've speedrun Yooka Laylee a bit, I really like how it feels, but definitely when I first played it casually, I was having trouble with the roll. One cool feature over the Banjo-Kazooie games is that you do have this stamina meter, and these pink butterflies will restore that stamina. So if you try and do this race and do it optimally, you'd want to go through the pink butterflies. Unfortunately, if you're trying to speedrun it or something, it is kind of hard to touch the butterflies, so it can be a little bit frustrating, but it's cool that they made this a little bit different and you can't just spam roll and fly everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit inspired by Breath of the Wild, which came out the same year, just slightly before Yooka Laylee. And I'll be honest, as much as there's been ups and downs so far, one of the places I absolutely fell in love with the game was Glitter Glaze Glacier, which is the second level. You can see here it's got some really beautiful lighting effects, and you can't beat a comfy snow level. In particular, the isometric palace in Glitter Glaze Glacier is really beautiful. It's got some awesome lighting effects and some really cool puzzles behind it. Not to mention I'm an absolute sucker for arcade rooms with cool retro carpet like that. I feel like in the absolute depths of the isometric castle, they really captured some of that sort of secluded vibe that some of the old Rare games had. Like Donkey Kong 64, I just love Fungi Forest, and when you come across a character there, it feels like that character hasn't seen another person in years, and you're just coming across them in their own little world. Isometric Palace does the similar vibe to that. And they also have the standard Rare characters with the googly eyes. I just love this bit where you have to make bubbles in the spa bath to open the KG for the Pagey. Classic Rare / Playtonic. The game actually can get pretty challenging in some parts as well. You have these minecart sections with some absolutely brilliant music by David Wise, but yeah, they can be very difficult, especially since you need a certain amount of gems to pass, and then when you get hit by enemies, you lose them. But once you learn these in a speedrun, they're so satisfying to do, and if you try like 10-20 times to get them, it's pretty good when you get to pull it off. This minecart section in particular is pretty difficult because it leads straight into a boss fight afterwards, which is also quite tricky, and you gotta do it all in one hit. While I do appreciate them not making the boss fights too easy, I did find this one a little bit frustrating, just because every time you lose it, it does take a long time to retry it. So just to finish up the casual review, I'll point out one of my absolute favourite parts of the game. It's very fourth wall breaking. You have this Pagey in the KG, and obviously it could just slide out the bars, but it says, oh no, I can't get out, because it tries to bonk the front. But then in the last level of the game, this thing just happens. Classic Rare. So that's pretty much going to be all for this review. There's a lot about the game that I haven't talked about here, but hopefully you got enough of an overview to, I guess, understand what this game's about, and maybe try and give it a go someday, because it's definitely worth trying out, especially if you like the Banjo series. So now we're going to talk about the speedrun, and as you can see, it's reasonably active, especially any percent with flight has a few runners, because that was it's sort of like the 16 star of this game. What we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about 100%, and then I'll gradually work our way down to any percent. Unfortunately, we can't talk about the TAS in this video because, well, there is no TAS of this game. It's pretty tricky to TAS anything on modern consoles like Switch, PS4, PC, but I really would love to TAS it one day. So the first category we'll look at today is 100%, and you can see that the world record here is a 347 on PC, and well, I have the record on console with a 415. So the PC and console runs are very, very different, but I'll just talk about PC first. So the first run we'll look at here is the 100% world record currently by Kaziev. Just be aware with the timing on this game, sometimes the real time versus the load remove times are a bit different, and that's partially why console can be a lot slower than PC on some categories, because console load times take a ridiculously long time compared to PC, and PC also cuts them out in the official timing. So the run starts out in Shipwreck Creek, where you have to get quills, but we're going to do a little trick here to skip that. So on the PC version only, if you change the display quality from fastest to fast, it causes a huge lag spike, and Yooka Laylee's jump speeds up with that lag, which causes Yooka to jump higher and skip this whole collecting 10 quills thing to get out of Shipwreck Creek. That saves probably about a minute or so there. Now after getting into Grunty's lair, Ivory Towers, we need to get the first pagey here, and rather than going through the intended path, you can just do cheeky jumps here. This is the thing that I really love about Yooka Laylee speedrunning. You can do some hectic parkour on all the scenery, and Playtonic allows you to actually stand on that stuff and have it all work. Now at this point we get another one of these lag clips, so basically we're going to change the quality from fastest to fast, and then clip through this like goo stuff here. And then Yooka will be able to swim under the wall and get out of bounds. Reason for this is actually doing the first level first is kind of slow. It's a lot better to progress a bit further through the lair and then go and do some of these later levels a bit earlier. So these lag clips are pretty tricky because you have to navigate on out of bounds scenery, but basically at this point we're into this tunnel here. So the first level that's done in the run is actually level 2, Glitter Glaze Glacier, and one of the primary focuses is to buy some moves here. So we do need particular moves to 100% the game. So usually the high jump move you don't really need, but most of the other moves you actually do. And you have to pay quills to get those moves. So a big part of the first bit of the run is farming quills. You do need all the quills to 100% it, but the primary reason we're getting it here is to get the moves. It would be great if we could find a glitch to get moves early, like FFM in Banjo-Kazooie. Both in Banjo-Tooie and Yooka Laylee, I think that would save a whole bunch of time and cut back on some of the annoying backtracking. Even with glitches at our disposal, we usually do have to do 2 trips into most levels for the 100% run here. So the first level is actually done second in the 100% run. Now the really good reason for that is because now we're coming into this level with a whole bunch of quills, so we don't have to fluff around farming too many before we can just go to Trouser and buy all the moves. The way that moves work in this game is that when you go into a level and talk to Trouser, they will unlock more and more moves for you to buy. So these 3 moves are the 3 that are available from World 1, but you can see that if you scroll down a little bit further, you would see those World 2 moves, which were already there because we went into World 2 before. So with some moves acquired, we have fairly standard gameplay from this point. So all we really do is just do the various puzzles to open the cages with some hectic parkour to get there. And then yeah, it's pretty glitchless at this point. And there's no real like clip to get into a cagey or anything. Now basically at this point the run becomes a mad rush to get to Capital Casino. This is the 4th level and it takes 10 pages to open, so it's not trivial to get into it this early, but you can see that 20 minutes into the run we're already in this 4th level. Now Kaziev spends not much time in this level at all. Basically what they do is get a few pages and get Reptile Rush. Reptile Rush is this move I talked about before where you can boost out of your roll. It's basically like the spin dash from Sonic the Hedgehog. Makes the movement a lot faster, but it makes it quite hard to grab stuff while you're moving that fast. So 100% does take a lot of technical skill. But the real reason we rush to Capital Casino is to get the flight move along with the Reptile Rush move. So once you're done in the casino, basically this cutscene will play and Trouser will spawn out here ready to teach you the fly move. All that you need to do to trigger this is get a pagey in Capital Casino, and the flight move seriously speeds up the game so much, so it's absolutely worth doing. You can also see here that Reptile Rush speeds up the game a whole bunch, so going to Casino this early is definitely worth it to get those 2 really important moves here. You get some other important moves like letting Yooka go invisible like that to skip those gates and everything, but yeah, the flight and the rush are those really important ones here. You would think that flight would break the game a whole bunch and let you get pages quickly, and to be honest, it does, but unfortunately it does get kind of slow because you still have to go through most of the intended paths to grab quills and stuff. There are 200 quills in each level and you do need all of them to 100% it, especially since the quills actually give you a pagey once you get all of them. So from this point on, we continue our pretty glitchless play. We have some very difficult pages to get, like this one here where you have to sonar all the balloons and pop them and get the pagey letters. This one can take a really long time if you're not quite good at flying and controlling where you're going there. One thing that I found helped in this game was holding the R button while flying. That puts the camera behind you, and that gave me a lot more control. Actually, it's a similar way that it works to Banjo-Kazooie. But we can see here that just to open this 1kg and get this 1pagey, they've had to fly around for a whole bunch of time getting these letters to open it up. So at this point, with all the really important moves that we need for the game, we pretty much go back to the start and just sweep through the entire game, using the flight ability to get pages extremely quickly. 100% also takes a lot of knowledge about where all the quills are, because it's pretty easy to get like 199 and not be sure where you're missing one. This is especially true considering they have some extremely cheeky quill placements like this one down here. Like, why would you ever go down here? Conveniently though, Vendy, the tonic machine, will give you something to help you locate quills. It sort of like makes a chime when you're near a quill or anything like that. So that can be helpful if you're looking to 100% it. And the Vendy tonic system is actually kind of like a New Game Plus thing, so it can be a bit controversial when running the game. So we go through and sort of sweep out the rest of the level. It's kind of unfortunate, but these Rextro games take a really long time to do. So this one is actually one of the shorter ones, but other ones can take several minutes per round. And not only that, but you have to beat each one twice. So once to beat it normally, and another one to beat Rextro's high score. It wouldn't be too frustrating if it was once, but yeah, twice is a bit too much in 100%. That's why the mid-level category, the 100 pages, I really enjoy running, because you cut out all the slow pages. This Rextro game is probably my favourite because there's actual skill involved with it. The others are pretty much all auto-scrollers. And in this level 1, we can really see how much having these extra moves like Flight and Reptile Rush speed up getting all these pages and quills. You see here this obstacle course you're supposed to do normally, but if you have Flight, you can just zoom through all the rings, cut corners and everything like that. So definitely worth going to the casino to get that move. We have the level Moody Maze Marsh up next. Now you think this level would be really annoying because it's basically a water level, but due to this bubble ability it's actually really fun. So Yooka and Laylee have this bubble ability where you can pretty much just walk underwater like that, and it also stops you from losing air, but it means that it turns all those water sections into essentially platforming sections with the cool little feature that if you pop your bubble you can swim around freely. So it has some really fun movement attached to it. That being said, water levels are always going to be a little bit dull, but at least this bubble kind of helps it out a little bit. Next up we have Icymetric Palace, well, really is a part of Glitter Glaze Glacier, and this is a really cool level. It has a pretty rare out of bounds. You can sort of fly up through the corner there and skip the boss fight, which is nice to see, because that boss fight takes absolutely ages to do. So we fly up there and go through the door. Now, although I said this boss was skipped before, that's sort of a lie actually. You still have to fight the boss here, but by doing the skip like we did before, the boss is supposed to be frozen in place. Unfortunately for Kaziev, that didn't quite work out in this run. The boss was still moving around, so they had to pretty much fight it normally, and hence the skip didn't save too much time. But if you get it to freeze, it obviously saves a whole bunch of time because you don't have to readjust every time you try and hit it. Next up we have the very last level in the game, level 5, Galleon Galaxy. And this level's pretty normal because we're supposed to have Flight at this point and pretty much all the moves leading up to this, so everything works pretty much as intended. But still, if you know what you're doing in this level, well, you can still do it pretty quickly. This level has one of my favourite rooms in the game. It's called Lunar Lockup, and basically the way that it works is that you have to do all these flower power-ups and stuff, and it pretty much has all the flower power-ups in the game, and you have to pick which ones to use and like solve puzzles and stuff. Normally earlier in the game it's just one of the flower power-ups you need at a time, but this is a really cool combination of multiple at once. Unfortunately for the run, Galleon Galaxy has a really slow boating section. And it also includes a very slow race. You would think a race would be intense, but it's not at all. You basically just cruise through, and it takes something like 3 minutes from memory. It also has one of the slowest Rextro games, and you actually have to pay attention to this one, because when you do the high score, you have to get all these quills. But that being said, this level still does have some pretty fun technical sections. Now basically at this point, we just clean up the run and then do the final boss fight to finish out the game. This final boss can be pretty tricky, especially if you're playing it casually, so having all the power-ups from 100% definitely helps here. Now that we looked at the PC record for 100%, I want to start talking about console runs. Now immediately you'll see these look slower, even for the short runs like any percent, 1232 console versus 1151 PC. So naturally, if you look at the leaderboards, you're going to think console slower. The main reason for that though is console uses RTA, whereas PC removes loads. So if you actually look at the RTA time, they're more similar, 1216 versus 1232. But that being said, console loads are significantly longer than PC. So realistically, if you compare the two world record any percent runs in terms of raw gameplay, the console run is faster. Which is why, while I started running on PC, I pretty quickly swapped to console. So we're looking now at my 100% console record in 4.15, and this was played on PS4. Also, for various technical reasons, I played this on a CRT, so I love the 90s aesthetic of this. And that lag clip that we saw on PC to skip getting these quills just doesn't work on console. Just due to the setting literally not being there, you can't create that lag spike and get a big jump. So at least on the PS4 version, you have to do this cheeky tree jump to get across, which is kind of technical but cool. And on the Switch version, there's another skip that's a little bit faster than this tree jump. So on console, Switch is a little bit faster, but I didn't own a Switch at the time of doing this run, so I did it on PS4. I think Switch loading times are a little bit slower than PS4, so this was probably still faster for 100%. But I've sort of alluded to the fact that console is much faster than PC, and we're about to see why. You can clip through any wall on console. You literally just attack at the wall and pause. So that whole slime clip that we saw before to get into this tunnel, nope, you literally just jump at the wall and you pause. Might take you a few goes, but it's going to be a lot quicker than screwing around with that quality setting to try and get through. Now some walls are harder than others. This one's particularly hard due to the positioning here, but if you're persistent enough with it, you get through. And those clips definitely have a lot of feel to them, and since doing this run, I've gotten a lot better at it myself. I don't really know why those clips don't work on PC, but I think it's something to do with like 30 FPS versus 60 FPS. You got a few little funky tricks like this to get pages really quickly, and as you can see, we're just going to zoom into the casino. We have this trick here. Normally you're supposed to do some jump around that light with the door, but you can just clip through the wall, why not? Now, so far we've seen these clips just allow you to go around the lair slightly quicker on console, so probably not a huge deal. But what we're about to see here is the absolute biggest application of this clip, which makes 100% so cool on console. You can clip into cages, believe it or not. It's not easy to do. You have to clip into the side of it, kind of like this, by pause clipping in. And then once you're in, you sort of wiggle your way in, grab the pagey. But then not only that, you actually have to clip out of the cagey. So sometimes this is worth it, sometimes it's not. But if we could get very consistent at these pause clips, which again, since it's run, I've gotten a little bit better at it, it becomes pretty easy to get pages a lot faster than PC. For example, this pagey that I pointed out before in the PC run where you had to pop all the balloons. No, you just fly into it, pause, wiggle your way in, grab the pagey, clip your way out. And that's a lot quicker than popping all the balloons, even if the clip takes you a really long time to do. This is part of the reason why I think it'd be really cool to get something like Switch or PS4 Tazzing working, because seeing all these KG clips first trying a Taz along with awesome movement would be really, really nice. Now honestly, with how much time this saves over the PC run, I could have done better and got sub 4 and then sub world record with the PC version even. So this 4.15 is nowhere near as optimized as the PC record currently is, but in theory console should be much faster for 100% even with the very slow loading screens on console. Now, as I'm sure you might be wondering, why didn't I sit and grind down the console record to actually beat the PC record if console's supposed to be faster? And pretty much this thing right here is why. I load Rextro's arcade, we get ourselves into the loading screen here, and then crash. So this wasn't consistent. It sometimes happened in Galaxy, it sometimes happened in Casino, but pretty much at the end of the run, once you got sort of far enough in, this is 3 hours into the run, at some point the game's going to get so overloaded to the point where it crashes on console. This seems to happen on PS4 and I'm pretty sure it happens on Switch as well. That crash lost me 3.5 minutes, and even saving quitting out of the game doesn't seem to reset the memory. It seems like you have to fully exit the game and come back in to avoid getting a crash like this. I don't understand it well enough to know how to optimize it and know how to work around it, but basically leaving the game on for too long, it really doesn't like. I think it's something along the lines of doing 100%, you're basically like doing everything in the game and loading too much into memory, and there must be some kind of memory leak on console or something. So understandably, I got pretty demotivated to run 100% on console. I was happy pulling it down till 415, but without solving these random crashes on Rexstro, that's pretty much where I left it. Luckily, it only seemed to happen once per run, so once it crashed, the whole memory reset and it's fine, but I didn't really feel like running 100% after this. For that reason, if anyone's looking at writing on console, I'd actually highly recommend this middle category, 100 pages. Normally you need 100 pages to open the final boss, so that's sort of the intended amount to beat the game, but if you're playing that category on console, you get all these cool KG clips and get heaps of fast pages with it, and you don't have to do any of the slow ones like Rexstro, which might also crash your game. Now, it actually says that I have the record here still on speedrun.com, but Ninpog has been grinding times down recently and has since beaten my 2:13 time. There's some really cool new routing that Ninpog's done with it. I don't know why it hasn't updated. I'm presuming it just hasn't been verified yet on the leaderboards. Now, I won't spend much time talking about 100 pagey, but at heart, it's just a really fun, fast-paced category. Think of it like 100% just without the boring bits, and it really shines on console because you have all these KG clips just showing how broken the console run can really be. I also had heaps of fun routing this category because you can do lots of shenanigans with room loading. So if you're in a sub-room in a level, pretty much what happens is, well, the main room's unloaded, but all the objects are still there. So this is a main room for Capital Casino, but all the geometry is gone. It's really just the objects and stuff that are around. And then something that I did to utilize this was basically became the helicopter and just flew around getting all the bits and pieces that I wanted to get without worrying about going around level geometry and having it in the way. So this just saves a little bit of time, but it's an example of some of the shenanigans you can get up to in the 100 pagey run. This wouldn't really be that feasible in a normal run because you normally have to stop and get quills, and doing this without the level loaded can be quite painful. Now, the casino wasn't the only place that I screwed around with deloading rooms in. In Galleon Galaxy, for example, I clip out of this room and then fly back to the main map of the level. The level's actually kind of far away compared to where this room is, but you can make your way back to it and you'll be all good. So that level looks pretty normal, although most of the level is made up of objects and that's why it still looks fairly stable. But as we get closer and closer, if you're familiar with the level, you'll realize there is a lot of stuff that's missing and unloaded. So for example, with this lighthouse bit here, normally you couldn't make your way down to this button. You'd have to go up through a horrible series of mazes in the lighthouse. But basically we can just go and hit that because the button's out in the open. The good thing is this actually avoids the clip that you have to do to get out of the lighthouse as well, since that's usually pretty painful. And then if we want it to all go back to normal, we can pretty much just come into a room and everything will load back normally. I think this room deloading stuff is something that has a lot of potential in Yooka Laylee speedruns, because I started to explore it a little bit, but not too much. So hopefully in some of the stuff that Ninpog's been doing with this category, we can see this expanded a bit more and put to use in 100 pagey. In theory, this is useful in 100% as well, but that category is just not optimized enough for it to really be worth it. Now, talking about room deloading, I need to tell you the absolute funniest thing with version differences in this game. So in Capital Casino, as you saw just there, you trade in these tokens to get pages. So pages aren't just out in the open, you have to get 10 tokens to get a pagey each time. But in version 1.0 of the game, if you do manage to deload the casino, all pages that you can get from the tokens are just sitting underneath the map, and you can literally just grab them, which is absolutely wild. So rather than getting, I think it's like 200 tokens, you can just immediately grab 20 pages just straight away, if you can deload this room, which you can. Now, getting a whole bunch of pages isn't useful in the shorter categories, but you would think that it would be useful in 100 pages or 100%. You can just grab like 20 extra pages under the casino in pretty much no time at all. But you'll notice that pretty much all these runs are played on 1.1, except for some older ones which are played on the original 1.0 patch. Even in 100%, not many of them are played on 1.0. But if we just go and look at a random run on 1.0, you might see why they don't use that version anymore. So yeah, we load up the game. Normally you would just skip this cutscene, but yeah, there is no cutscene skip for the intro cutscene on 1.0. So basically, even though they patched that huge glitch in Casino, which would have saved a whole bunch of time in 1.0, because in that same patch they introduced a skip for this cutscene and some more text and other cutscene skips, it turns out that the newer patches are actually faster to run for Yooka Laylee. This is something that I think is really cool because the devs wouldn't have wanted people to cheese those 20 pages, so in the same patch they just introduced this cutscene skip and then, well, people are running the new version, they're doing the pages glitchless and they're getting a nice cutscene skip. One thing I really want to mention though is this absolutely destroyed Yooka Laylee as a speed game in the early days. Like, who would want to speedrun this game with the 5-minute cutscene at the start? I think for that reason, had there been a skip for the cutscene when this game had first come out, like in the original patch, Yooka Laylee might have been a more bustling speed game than it currently is. But if you ran it back in the day and was frustrated by this ridiculously long cutscene on 1.0, maybe come back and give it another go now. You can't do the casino skip, but it is a lot more fun. The other little benefit of this is if you're going to run on console or whatever, you don't have to stuff around with down patching. Like when I was running, I was just using the most recent Switch version. So now we talked about some of the longer categories, I really want to talk about Any Percent. It has an interesting history. So Yooka Laylee came out on the 11th of April 2017. And then on the 12th of April, MTP found this glitch to skip the 100-page door. So this works on both console and PC, because you sort of zip under the goop there and go under the wall. You do need the flight move to do this glitch though, because as we'll see, you just get into flight and that allows you to navigate out of bounds and get around that 100-page door. So as you might expect, this saves a lot of time over the run, because 100-page is, well, like a 2-hour run, and at this point Any Percent came down to roughly half an hour. So this is the door here, it's an elevator up to the capital B fight, and pretty much what happens is you just go in here, and as long as you're behind the door, you can press the button to go into the fight. Pretty cool stuff. Thanks to this glitch, the Any Percent, well, it would have been called Any Percent at that time, but we now call it Any Percent with flight, that run was born, and as you can see, they are all around that 30-minute time. So just quickly looking at Hedwig's world record run here, you can see the same quality skip used to skip those 10 quills at the start of Shipwreck Creek. That's like a PC thing. The start of the run pretty much does look like 100% getting those 10 pages to get into Capital Casino. Doing the quality skip to get under the goop in that first room, skipping pretty much the whole first area, quiz, level, etc. I will note these quality skips only work when there's not a solid wall, you can't just use it to clip into anything. Another quality skip to sort of skip this gate closing here, because if you get too close it's going to close on you. We got this really cool book maze skip where you can literally just attack into that book. This is supposed to be the exit to the maze, but if you attack into it and get lucky, well, you can sort of just go through like that. We clean up a few more quick lair pages here. We take a trip back into the first level. Here we can get a couple moves. So Slurp Shot and Buddy Slam purely just make the final fight a little bit faster. And we grab a couple pages in here as well. Now, in order to skip the second quiz after the second hub, we need to do another quality skip into here. So this is sort of like a corner clippy thing, and that allows you to get through. This skip is quite tricky. I used to do it when I ran PC, but it is not easy. And I think depending on the quality of your PC, it depends on how well the skips work as well, so it can be a little bit frustrating. And one other thing I'll mention about running on PC, and kind of why I stopped, is if you've got a PC that lags, it usually doesn't slow down the game, apart from text boxes. So text boxes will slow down, so you do need a good PC if you're going to run. Anyway, once we're in that last hub, we go into the casino, and the goal is to get a pagey very, very quickly. So you might expect the strategy to be that you would get pages that you can get normally without having to trade in those casino tokens, but unfortunately all those pages in this level are pretty slow. We're talking like minecart challenges, Rextro Arcade, that sort of stuff. So a quick way to get a whole bunch of pages is to do this. You play these slot machines here. So this is the other reason why ground pound was needed from the first level. So if it wasn't for these slot machines, yeah, ground pound would speed up the final boss, but it probably wouldn't be worth getting it. But because those two slot machines are there, it's really quick to just grab those coins from those and then quickly trade them in for a pagey. We don't need the pagey at all at this point. The only reason that we trade it in is because that way we can get flight when we come out of casino, because otherwise Trouser doesn't spawn. Now, when you're playing this category, you'll find it quite jarring because you're expecting to have certain moves at this point, and then you just don't. So here, for example, you need to go invisible to stop that gate from coming up. So Hedwig has to do like a hectic jump around and some parkour stuff to get around it. Same thing when we played the slot machine in the casino before. You might notice Hedwig was pushing them from behind, and that's because they didn't have the lizard tongue ability thing. But basically at this point, we're going to be able to get flight from Trouser. So once we get flight, we're going to do literally that same skip that was found the day after the game came out. So there it is. Eventually. And then you pretty much just fly to the final boss. Now you do have a quiz which causes a bit of RNG. You can get fast questions and slower questions. So realistically, this is why I prefer something like 100 pages, because if you're trying to optimize this, you might get frustrated by the quiz inconsistency. Obviously, there's still the inconsistency in a category like 100 pages, but it's a smaller percentage of the run and hence less variance. Now, we got the capital B fight. Believe it or not, the first phase is actually the hardest phase to optimize. So capital B will throw bees at you, and you have to outrun the bees. Normally, you'd use your fancy moves to do this, but if you can roll properly, you can get them. And then you have to do some hectic attacks on capital B. Now, you'll notice the buddy slam sort of ground pound attack being used there, and that's what I said about it speeding up the fight. So not only does that body slam attack allow us to do the slot machines, but it makes the fight go a lot faster, because Hedwig has used a special tonic from Vendy which makes that attack stronger. So you'll see here 2 buddy slams pretty much finishes off this cycle. It is possible to 2-cycle capital B there without buddy slams or anything like that, but it's incredibly difficult. And that's why this category is pretty hard to optimize on console, because on console we don't have buddy slam. Next here we get this attack where we just have to like throw these flowery things at capital B. This is the other move that Hedwig got in Tribal Stack Tropics, that first level, and as you can see, hitting capital B from a distance there makes this whole round quite a lot quicker. You can do it without these flowers. You have to just sort of approach capital B carefully and attack him, but it does take a lot longer. So even all that extra time going into the extra level, level 1, it does save a whole bunch of time on this capital B fight. This phase is fairly straightforward. You just wait for him to do his thing and then use that overpowered buddy slam thing to deal a whole bunch of damage quickly. And then we get our way into the last phase of the fight, which is where capital B throws missiles at you. Now the goal of this phase is to get the missiles to turn around and hit capital B. The first phase is extremely easy. You just go one little notch to the right and then you just fly at capital B. The missiles just hit him. But in the second phase of this, he starts flying around the arena, and there's pretty much nothing you can do except get into flight and aim the missiles at him. So this is the other reason why flight is sort of needed in the run, because, well, how are you going to aim these missiles at capital B without having the flight ability? So there we go, a couple hits, and then eventually the fight's going to be over. Now I looked at the PC version, we'll have a quick look at the console version. You'll see that the console record is 1 second faster than the PC record, although keep in mind, console loading zones are a lot slower, so in terms of gameplay, this is way faster than PC. So I'll briefly talk about the differences in the console run here. So in the PC version we used a quality setting skip to do a higher jump and get up here, and on the PS4 we did the hectic tree jump. But on the Switch version, and only the Switch version, that bush protrudes out enough that you can literally just jump up the wall, which makes the Switch version a tiny bit quicker in the Shipwreck Creek here. Now the cool thing about playing on consoles, it opens up many faster pages than what's available on PC. For example, this one here, where you can just pause clip slightly into the glass and grab that pagey. Also, I think Nimpark might already have it, but there's a pagey and a kg there that's going to be really fast to grab. Not to mention that with the skip to get past this hub world, you can just do the pause glitch through this wall here rather than trying to do that slime clip with the quality settings. The frustrating thing about running this though is you can see how optimal your pause clips need to be to get world record, because yeah, Nimpark's done a lot of runs and brought this time down pretty low. Now I think one of the biggest differences is PC at this point would go back to World 1 and buy those moves. The moves help you do some more stuff in Casino, get a few more pages and do the capital B fight faster. But at this point on Switch, you don't bother going back to World 1. You literally just do a pause clip through this wall, which is much easier than that quality clip, and you go to the last hub. Now that we're in the last hub, you literally could just clip through the door to get to the final boss. The door is right there and you can pause clip straight through it. But given this is any percent with flight, Nimpog needs the 10 pages to open Casino and get the flight ability. This category is a little bit arbitrary on console because we could just pause clip through the door anyway. But that being said, capital B fight is incredibly hard to do without flight, so that's the other reason why we sort of get it in this run, and it's a nice opening category to any percent, a lot like 16 Star in Mario 64. This is the novel hovel here, and Nimpog's going to go out and then go to the casino. But there's a really cool clip that you can do out of novel hovel to get to casino straight away. It saves like 2 seconds, but only if you get the pause clip first try, so it's not really worth going for if you want to be consistent. But basically Nimpog's got 10 pages now, so they're going to go to the casino and head in. Now at this point, the PC version had the ground pound ability, so they were able to just play 2 slot machines and then get a pagey and get out of the casino. But since we haven't been to level 1 and got ground pound, we don't have any moves here. So Nimpog's going to get a few slower tokens in the casino, and this is where, even though we're really far ahead of PC now, we're going to start slowing down in both this level and the capital B fight. But at the end of the day, it's worth going a little bit slower in these later levels and completely skipping level 1 on the console version, and that's thanks to pause clips opening up routing opportunities for us. Speaking of routing opportunities, the console version gets these coins in here, and they're a lot faster to get because of the pause clip. This just basically wouldn't be possible to do on PC. Now, as we saw on the PC version, we had to sort of navigate around that gate that kept closing without the invisible ability. But on the console version, we can just do this awesome pause clip out, and it's got this really fun out-of-bounds navigation. Again, this parkour stuff is coming in handy again, and it's like out-of-bounds parkour. This bit's really easy to accidentally fall down on, and I think Nimpog almost did there. But that's a lot faster to get through that way than going through normally and skipping the gate. And that gets you pretty much to where you learn flight. Alright, now we're into the capital B fight, but remember, we don't have ground pound and we don't have the tongue ability to shoot the flowers at capital B, so this fight is a lot harder on the Switch version of the run than it is on the PC version of the run, at least in 80% with flight category. So same process here, you got to sort of outrun the B, but here we don't have the ground pound here, so we got to do some really precise attacking on capital B, and then some really precise attacking again. Now, I don't think Nimpog got it in this run, but you can 2-cycle this boss still by attacking it really precisely. And that's the thing that makes this run incredibly hard. So it's literally the only thing that I was never able to nail on the run. I don't think I've even done it once. But if you can get this done optimally, then you don't really lose much time and you can sort of go for world record. There's some hectic tutorial on getting this and all the timings that you need, but I've never really been able to do it. Then we have this phase. Now normally you would shoot the flowers at capital B here, but basically you've just got to go and try and get a hit on him. You can probably see why this is so much slower without the flowers, because with the flowers we could hit him multiple times, whereas with these rolls we can only get one hit in on him. Now I don't mind this too much because this cycle is not at all very hard to do. It just takes longer than what the PC version does for this, so it's not really a deal breaker running this category. But the reason that I sort of stopped running this category is trying to 2-cycle that first bit of the capital B fight, I could literally just never get, and I couldn't handle that my runs weren't that optimal because of it. It's worth noticing that in a longer category like 100 page, you just would have ground pound, and then you could do this fight optimally. Now, after the game was figured out how to beat with that flight skip, people did eventually figure out how to do a clip without flight and beat it at any percent. So we'll talk about that now. So now we'll talk about Hedwig's any percent world record in 11:51 on PC. So the run plays out pretty much the same all the way up to here. The only difference is you're not trying to get 10 pages, you're not going into level 1, you're just zooming all the way to the end of the layer here, using the same sort of clips we saw before. Now at this point, normally we'd use a flight clip to get into capital B, but we won't be getting flight in this run. So what you do here is you lure this enemy to the wall, and you try and get it to hit you into the wall. Now it can be a little bit finicky, but if you set it up right, like Hedwig does here, you see the enemy goes through the wall and pushes Yooka into the wall. Now from here, we don't have the clip automatically, because we still have to do out of bounds navigation. So we need to jump on top of this and sort of fly around towards the door. Now personally, I've seen this flightless clip develop over the years. It's gone through several iterations, but from what I can tell here, this seems to be one of the easier methods to do it. The old methods were a little bit longer, more out of bounds nav, and less consistent. But here Hedwig's done a really impressive job and gotten through to capital B. Now, even though the clip is harder to get into capital B, I don't think that's the reason why these categories are still separated. The capital B fight itself is much harder when you have pretty much no moves. So I already talked before about the 2 cycle, but we'll see here Hedwig actually gets it successfully in this run. So you see the first thing there, just running out of the way of the Bs and then hitting capital B, and some very, very precise attacking and jumping there. Hedwig then does pretty much the same thing the second time around, again very precise attacking, and we see there a successful 2 cycle. So I cannot stress enough how hard that is to do. I've tried it many times with the setups and just can't get it to work myself. From here we have the same issue with the second phase as what we saw on console, any % with flight. You're supposed to throw flowers at capital B, but we don't have them, so we have to be really careful and actually come and attack him like this. And it's even harder because Hedwig doesn't have a roll, so you have to do some precise attacking here because you don't have the extra speed from the roll to approach capital B. Now the rest of the fight plays out pretty much the same until you get to the missile phase. The first missiles are easy because you just sort of jump at capital B. But then we have the later missiles, and capital B starts flying around the arena, and we don't have flight to lure these missiles at him. So you have to do some extremely precise setups, and then jump on the missiles with Yooka, and then ride them towards capital B, and you don't have much control over their direction when you're on top of them like that. So realistically, this is probably the reason why the categories are still separated, because if we wanted a nice any % category for new runners to pick up, I don't think this would be feasible. These missile setups are just too intense to do without flight. And for that reason, I've never been able to do a straight any % run myself, even on console where pause clips make it a lot easier to do over that enemy clip into the wall. But again here, really impressive run and really great to see from Hedwig there. Now I won't talk about console any % because it's pretty much the same, the only difference is using a pause clip to clip into capital B's door. All that same difficulty with the capital B fight still applies, it's pretty tricky to do. And if you're going to pick up this game, any % with flight is probably the way to go. It's basically the 16 star of this game, and like 0 star and 1 star, any % is much more difficult. So that's going to be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about this hidden gem, and if you haven't tried Yooka Laylee, I would give it a go. It's definitely worth your time. Thanks so much for watching.